Hi there, friends. Long time no see. Rebecca here, the Dragon Librarian from Farmington Community Library, and happy New Year. I'm so overjoyed that we're into 2022 finally. We've got a whole brand new year worth of amazing books. There's so many great books that are coming out that I'm so excited to read and talk to you guys about and hear everybody's feedback. Super exciting. But the most exciting thing, I think, about starting a brand new year is thinking about some of the best books and some of our favorite books that we read the previous year. So for the next couple weeks, I'm actually going to be talking about some of the best books from 2021. This week in particular, I'm going to talk about the top 5. So that is my top 5 favorite books of 2021. Now, this is going to be a subjective list, obviously. I read over 500 books this year, so it was really hard to narrow it down, but these are the ones that I think were the best. They are my favorite books. There might be someone here that you've read and like thought, yeah, I didn't think this was so good, or why didn't you feature this book? This book was amazing, or even more amazing than this book. And if that's the case, that's awesome. Write me an email. Come in and visit me at the library. Leave a comment. I love hearing about your guys' favorite books, what you love to read, what really struck you as amazing. But here are the ones that I think were just the best. And what makes a book become something that I want to put in this category is a few different things, but it's not necessarily down to a book that's super well written, right? Because I'm going to forget about that. If it's well written, that's great and that's awesome, but I want to think of a book as a favorite that is a book that really resonated with me. A book that was just really struck me emotionally and is going to stay with me for some time. If it moved me, either for happiness or sadness or for whatever, that is a book that for me means so much. So, without further ado, number 5 out of the top 5. The Reading List by Sarah Nisha Adams. Of course, you guys knew there was going to be a book about books on this list. There just had to be. But this book is not just a simple book about books. So this is it's about a community, it's about a library, it's about family, it's about connecting with other people through books, which is just such an amazing it's just such an amazing thing. And if you're a book lover, you know this, or if you've been to the library and you've connected with myself or one of the other librarians over a book that you love. So this is a story that connects this elderly widower who just recently lost his wife, and he's just bereft. So lonely, even though he has grown-up children, he's just so lonely without his wife, who was his best friend, his partner. And it also is about a story about this high school girl who is working part-time at the library and likes books, but, can take them or leave them. Well, she finds this list in the back of one of these books, and it's a reading list. And she decides to follow this reading list, and she starts reading these books and then recommending those books to this widower, and they make this connection over this list. And like I said, it's such an amazingly beautiful story, so heartwarming, and the way that these two, their lives connect and everything is just, I love this book. It hit me right in the feels. I loved it so much. And it's such a feel-good story, too. There's definitely sad things that happen in it. I'm not going to say that it's just all, sunshine and rainbows. There is some sadness, but the overwhelmingly feeling of hope and beauty that comes from this book is just phenomenal. Number 5, The Reading List. Number 4 is a historical fiction book called Matrix by Lauren Groff. I love Lauren Groff. I think she's an amazing writer. This is definitely my favorite book that I've ever read by her. It's so phenomenal. It's about these nuns in this convent in the 12th century, and it's amazing. You would think that sounds like the most boring book ever, and it's not. It's about this girl who is sent from this French court because she doesn't fit in to be the abbess of this convent that is falling apart, basically. The nuns are starving, they don't have any money, they have no status or anything. And it's the story of this abbess and how she turns this convent into this powerhouse establishment. And it is amazing. Now, this is a book where I would say that the emotion and it was just as strong as the power of the writing. The writing to me in this was so beautiful. It was hands down gorgeously written. And it's not a very long book either, so I think it's less than 300 pages. Yeah, it's only about 250 pages, so it's a very fast, quick read, but there's a lot of depth here too. Love this book, absolutely. If you're looking for a historical fiction book that's a little bit different than the plethora of World War II historical fiction books that are always coming out, this is a really great, unique story. Matrix. Now, that book was a very thin, short book. This is the complete opposite of that, this next book. At a whopping almost 600 pages, I think it was. The Book of Form and Emptiness by Ruth Ozeki. The Book of Form and Emptiness. Holy cow, do I love everything about this book. It is amazing. So this is a book that is definitely a little bit surreal, tiny bit of a magical realism, but it's mostly a realistic contemporary story other than that. And it has to do with objects, and it has to do with memory, and it has to do with family and connection and just being human, basically. And it's about this boy named Benny whose father dies, and some of the struggles that he's having growing up with his mom, who is becoming a hoarder, and he sees the world in a very different way than other people, because basically the premise of this book is that every object has a resonance. It has a, I don't want to say soul, but sort of. It has a voice, right? It has a voice, and it has its own embodiment. And he can hear this. Benny can hear the voices of everything, and it's sort of making him nuts because there's all these voices all the time. And not only that, but every person has their own book, which is narrating their life. And Benny can hear and communicate with his book as well. And that is who's telling the story. It goes back and forth between Benny and this book that is narrating his life. And it sounds really crazy and strange, and it works, though. This book is so amazing because at the end of it, or really at the core of it, rather, it's a book about humans and connection and what it means to be alive in this world. I was totally taken by surprise by this book. Did not expect it to make this list when I started it. Loved it. Loved it, loved it, loved it. It was amazing. The Book of Form and Emptiness. Now, book number 2 on this list is actually the book that I was expecting to be my number 1 book of the year. Sometimes, you know, you hear about a book and you just, before you even read it, you know you're going to love it. And that was the case of this book. As soon as I heard about it, I was counting down the days until it was published so that I could read it. And I did love every second of it. It's amazing. Cloud Cuckoo Land by Anthony Doerr. So Anthony Doerr also wrote All the Light You Cannot See. And if you're a fan of that book, which I do love that book as well, you just have to go into this knowing it is not anything like that book. So it's really better to just go into this with no expectations of, oh, I loved All the Light You Cannot See, and that was an amazing book. This book is very, very different. So it's 3 different points of view, and they all connect at the end. And basically it's set really far in the past at Constantinople, and it's set also in the present day, and it's set in the far future. And the thing that connects all 3 of these stories and these timelines is one book. This one particular story, and the way it has traveled through history and traveled through time and traveled through different people's lives. And it's basically another book about humans and connection and what it means to be alive. But it's also about stories and how stories connect us, how stories make us better people, and how they connect us to other people and make us empathize with them. I cannot speak highly enough about this book. It is phenomenal, phenomenal story. And I actually bought, I loved it so much, I bought 2 editions of it. The regular edition and the special edition from Barnes & Noble, because I just love this book. It's so good, and it totally deserves all the hype it's getting, and it is getting a lot of hype. Completely deserved. Now, despite that, and how much I love that book, it's not my number 1 pick. It's my number 2 pick. My number 1 pick was a book I expected to love, but not as much as I did, and it completely blew me away. My number 1 book of the year for adult fiction, Under the Whispering Door by T.J. Klune. Now, TJ Klune has also written a book called The House in the Cerulean Sea, which is also phenomenal. But this book I loved it so much more than that one. This book has just a whimsical, emotional, beautiful feel to it. And it's about this man who has died in the beginning of the book, and he was not a good person. He was very selfish, arrogant, self-centered, didn't care about other people, didn't connect to anybody. So he's dead at the very beginning of the story, and he is now going to the ferryman to cross him over to the next world. But before he's going to do that, he has to stay in the ferryman's house, which is actually a tea shop, and try to not make amends, but basically figure out where he went wrong before he can make peace enough with himself to move on to the next step. Like I said, it's a very whimsical, amazing, beautiful story. I don't know what else to say about it other than you have to read this book. If you loved his previous book, The House in the Cerulean Sea, I guarantee you will love this one. If you haven't read the other one, it doesn't matter. Just pick this up immediately and read it as soon as you can, because I don't think I've ever cried as hard as I did in my whole life as I did at the end of this book. Happily, not, tears of wanting to jump off a bridge, but it was so, so emotional and so beautiful and wonderful. Oh, this book, so good. Under the Whispering Door. Well, there you have it, our top 5 books of 2021. Next week, we're going to talk about some runners-up, and then the following week, maybe some speculative fiction that I really love this year. But those were the top 5 out of over 500 books that I read this year. Those were the top 5. So I hope you like them and they sound interesting. Come and get them from Farmington Community Library. Feel free to like this video. I would appreciate it if you liked this video, if you enjoyed it, and come in and talk to me about some of the books that you think are the best ones of 2021. Thanks so much, friends, and have a wonderful rest of the day.